So thank you, Camilla. It's been a while.
Yeah, a really long time.
Yeah. How have you been?
Yeah, good. Yeah, really well. I think. Yeah, busy year, which is probably a good thing. Was very worried when I read your first set of surveys last March about what was about to happen to the market.
Oh,
I was pleased it didn't work out quite.
Yeah, I was like the soothsayer of doom and gloom at that point, but I think I was just sort of portraying the sentiment of a lot of people. There was a lot of fear and concern around, which, you know, we're 12 months on,
and also at the time of that survey, none of the support measures had been announced, so it wasn't that unrealistic.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right, Anthony, about the support. I think the government have done a fab job. In essence, you know, obviously we're always big to slag off our government, and especially over something that I don't think any government in the world has ever had to contend with. They've done a sterling job in keeping tech on track, I suppose, and
they've taken it a step further, right? Announcing a later stage fund to complement the future fund, so almost a catalyst for that. Yeah.
Was that this week? I may have missed that. Or was that the budget?
I think it was in the budget.
Yes. Yeah. Oh no, I did see that. Sorry. So I was actually trying to think as to when we first met, Camilla. It was a few years ago, and I always remember. To be perfectly honest, you were. At the events at Bloomberg, probably one of the first female VCs I met in London, so that's probably 2013, I'd say. So for a lady that looks so young and fresh-faced, you have many years of experience, I would add.
Oh, thanks, Chris. Definitely don't feel that young. I think it was 2013. I think it was a Bloomberg pitch event you were running. And I still remember meeting the sort of dog buddy network, which has stayed a faithful companion for my dog for some time. So.
Oh, was that was Licky, wasn't it? Or Mika? I can't remember. The Borrow My Doggy.
Yeah, exactly. Borrow My Doggy.
Right. And at that time, so Borrow My Doggy was obviously probably, it went on and grew. Did you invest in it?
We didn't end up investing in it. We spent quite a long time at MMC playing around with it, and I think one of the managing partners got lots of requests to go on walks that he took very favourably.
Okay, got you. So then, as you mentioned, it was MMC Ventures, who are a fab fund that probably have one of the best offices I've ever visited in VC land, because it was right smack bang in the middle of Kensington from memory, Kensington Square. I don't know if they're still there. I haven't popped over there for a while, but you know, was that the first role for you, Camilla? I don't know if you can sort of give the audience a bit of a background on this is your life and sort of journey through university, and then I want to become a VC. Was it like that, or how did it all happen?
I don't wish it was quite as linear as that. I guess so originally I wasn't actually going to go to university, so took some time out between school and university and used to buy and sell horses, and then realized that was like really not very scalable at all, quite profitable but not very scalable. And had a few sort of interesting legal debates around sort of definitions of how you buy and sell things in auctions, and so decided to get a proper training would be a good thing. So studied law at university, really loved that, and really loved the sort of like academic side of law, principles of law and all the frameworks. A little bit less keen on sort of looking at paperwork for years and years, so ended up joining a consulting firm, and actually that firm was like very much focused on private equity. So for some time that I was like, that's probably the route I'm going to end up going. And then actually went to San Francisco with them, which was game changing.
Hello. So okay, step by step. So I always love to dig around on degree, because I find it really tells you a lot about someone. So with the law, what type of law was it? Was it corporate law or pray tell?
Yeah, so it's so the course is actually called jurisprudence, so it's the philosophy of law. So it's much more about sort of the principles of law, and you did that across like lots of different subjects. So we did Roman law, we did the philosophy of law, and then you could also specialize a bit. So I did corporate and tax as well. It's
like law foundation.
Yeah, exactly, law foundation.
Was it really hard?
No, so it's actually the opposite. So you have zero coursework, zero thesis, and 100% of your degree is decided in 2 weeks with like 13 exams. And so you can just cram 13 exams very quickly.
And so party for the rest of the year, I suppose.
So for any slackers out there listening, there you go.
Tip number 1.
All you have to do is cram.
I think the advice from our law tutor at the time, when she was like, the revision book summary is probably all you can write in a 20-minute exam. So
just memorize it.
Let's revise. Yes. Okay. And then you mentioned private equity in San Francisco. Exciting. I mean, which particular organization was it you were with, and was the San Francisco trip the real sort of, you know, metamorphosis of your love of tech? And I mean, what years were we talking here?
So I think there were probably 2 sort of real moments. So one was going to say, I went with an organization called Bain Consulting, equity, and spent 6 months in San Francisco with them. And actually at the time, it was just when Uber and Dropbox and all those companies were very early stage. So we had all of those companies into the office and sort of did strategy sessions with them. And I think it was the first time I understood that sort of, you know, any of your sort of peers or sort of like companions could build something that was really like world changing, and there was like a different level of ambition. There was a different level of excitement around what technology could actually achieve, and so that really helped me like reshape how I thought about things going forward. In parallel, at work, I was also working with an organization through Bain called Worldpay, which has gone on to be one of the bigger payment processors. And part of the project we were doing was building the e-commerce part of that offering, and they bought a business called Envoy at the time, and integrated some really amazing entrepreneurs into the business. And so saw the like energy they brought and the like forward-thinking nature and the speed that they moved at. And it was really amazing. Like they were transformational in Worldpay's journey, and to see the impact such a small team could have so quickly was super inspiring.
Yeah. So Anthony, you go.
I was going to say Bain had quite a few good early picks. I remember they also like led the first funding round for Rent the Runway. It was, if I remember correctly, it was a pretty sizable check, and it was the first funding round as well that they also led it. Huge company now as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's Bain Consulting and Bain Private Equity. So I was working for Bain Consulting, which does quite a lot of work with Bain Private Equity.
Yeah.
Being the investor. So.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I've had a few chats this week with well, one was the lovely Luciana, who is a venture scout at Ada Ventures, and she's done a lot for, you know, sort of, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, for sort of minority groups, and with her it's LGBT, and we were talking about ageism, and actually I was sort of saying that it's quite interesting because, you know, I have many friends who've got loads and loads of experience and were in banking, and, you know, even looking at myself, you know, I worked with Google and Salesforce when they were like IPOing, and we were just talking, and the point she just made about, you know, you were in the Uber coming in, and Airbnb and Worldpay, you know, the point I'm trying to make is, you know, again, for your youthful looks, you have amazing amount of experience. I was alluding to the point with the point about ageism, was that, you know, there seems to be this thing at the moment, or there's no kind of like, you know, there's women in tech, there's all these different things. There's not oldies in tech, which, you know, if you think about it, all these young and aspiring founders out there, just because, like in my case, just because someone's over 50 shouldn't be classified as a negative. I actually personally think the experience, and like you're nowhere near as old as me, Camilla, but the experience that people have had in their formative years of whatever role they've been doing in tech, be it in finance or building businesses, it's really, really important, and it really, really plays out in the next sort of evolutions of people's careers. And I certainly, knew you, or got to know you very well at MMC, and it was very clear there that sort of, I suppose, ability had been honed with the time with Bain to actually be able to spot some real winners. Because I think when you were at MMC, you backed some great businesses. I don't know if you can talk a bit more about some of those businesses. I mean, one of is the Bloom and Wild, which I think has just had a massive funding round, next funding round, I think, a huge valuation. And that was one of your seedlings, I think, from memory.
Great pun.
It's literally a seedling.
Seedling, Bloom and Wild. Nice one, Chris.
So there's I had a bit of a warble there about ageism, but I mean, I do think the experience, and did that help you form some of those great investments at MMC, your work in San Francisco?
So I mean, I'm still probably from the process that I think investing there's a very big degree of luck, and I guess we were sort of lucky that in 2013-14, direct consumer brands, quite a new category. And I think as a result, we were fortunate to back, Bloom and Wild, Gusto, and Elder, at a relatively similar time. And those companies both have.
Sorry, what's the third one you mentioned there, Camilla? There was a bit of interference.
Elder, which is a sort of online elderly care.
Okay, right, got you. Yeah. Yeah, because I certainly know two of those have gone on to huge. It was obviously Gusto and Bloom and Wild are household names now. But what about Elder? How's that one gone?
Good. I mean, I think Elder was Gusto would have been 2013. I think our first investment into Bloom and Wild was 2015, and then our first investment into Elder was 2016. So it's a few years behind, but it's following a very similar trajectory. We're really excited about the potential of changing the elderly care industry. I think the one thing that I guess I took from Bain was it was all about the people, and really sort of focusing on understanding how those people thought about building teams, thinking about strategy and structure. And we've been really fortunate in both Aaron, who is the CEO of Bloom and Wild, he's just an incredible operator. He's Phil, the COO, who's just like a machine. And very similarly, so Timo he's requalified as a coach so that he can really think about leadership development at a new level. He did an MBA whilst he was doing his Series A to try and sort of upskill himself to think about senior leadership. So we've just learned a huge amount from working with those individuals and watching their focus on excellence around leadership. And I guess that's now what we look for.
Yeah, I suppose in that experience of sort of building the investment, the support, the helping those founders build the business. I mean, how all-consuming was it then? I mean, and I would ask, have you think, you obviously you are a very experienced VC. This was 2012 to 2017, I'm guessing. In that time frame, was it different backing a business to scale and grow and become a major player than it maybe is now? Or I'm just kind of curious, is it different?
So I think one thing that is different, and I guess we're sort of starting to deploy out of Eco is the timeline between fundraising rounds. So I think when we were backing sort of Gusto and Bloom and Wild, it was 12 months to 24 months between fundraising rounds. So you had some time to make an investment, bed things in, start to work with the team, and then you'd think about going out to fundraise. What we're seeing now is that time period is shortening. And so that, I guess, slightly changes the dynamic of how we work with founders on a daily basis, because, the conversation is around fundraising much earlier, less about building the business.
So then at the MMC, it was probably a less intense amount of contact with portfolio companies than it perhaps is now.
I So I'm not sure it was less intense, but it was definitely, there was time to consider some of the fundraising strategy, maybe.
And you know, with the VCs we've had on, a few of them have mentioned this, you know, almost the really smart, good founders or great companies, they almost instantaneously go from seed straight into Series A, and then you know, it's like a whirlwind. Is that something you're seeing? Is it sort of like sorry, what is that time frame?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing that. So we started investing we made our first investment in April of 2020 out of ECA. And I think of the 3 investments we've made, 2 will have closed big, decent follow-on rounds. Within a year. So,
okay, right. And look, you know, we're here to talk about eco, and you know, obviously we talk more about MMC so far, but you know, I obviously, I think we both have a lot of love for that period, and you know, and
everybody at MMC, I think they've done they continue to do an amazing job, and we're hoping to co-invest with them soon.
Okay, great. Yeah, and so you know, it's now the time to tell people about eco, and you know, I've always a reason for eco. I'm always again nosy about a name. Does it stand for something? Is it like in the old ad industry that people used to have their surname, and you've chosen the initials this time, or what's the logic behind the name?
Yeah, so there's 2 different things to eco. So there's the meaning of eco, which we really like. So it means first in Sanskrit, and it also means from the periodic table, it means predicted but not yet discovered. So we really like the meaning around it. We like the fact that no one else is using it. The real answer is that we needed to have a name. We had a very important LP meeting. We didn't have a name, and John, one of my business partners, his wife actually found the name on a baby finder name. Yeah, once we found out what it meant, we were like, this is definitely the name for us. But originally it came from the baby finder.
Okay. And looking at eco, what's on the tin? What are you focused on?
Yes, we're focused on 3 things, and I know we're not meant to have that many, but one is consumer technology. So we really believe there continues to be just massive opportunity in the consumer space, and that's where I think 80% of value from Europe is being created in the venture ecosystem. The second is companies that are building with profit and purpose in mind. So within that, we're specifically focused on sustainability. We've made 2 investments, unfortunately not announced, in that space. Affordable access to basic products and services. We've made 1 investment, Urban Jungle, in that space, and then consumerization of health, and we're about to make an investment in that space. And then the final piece is just around people. And I think we were really honest with ourselves, like the predictor of success is probably less about thesis, and it's more around, do those founders really have the skill set to be able to build a sustainable business over an extended period of time. And so we're trying to develop a framework to objectively assess founders. As with all things, it takes time to get to the perfect framework. We're definitely in MVP stage of that, but hoping it sort of learns and develops over time.
So with the first one on consumer tech, and I don't know if you can tell from my accent, but I've not always lived here in the UK. And coming from the US, obviously it's a very developed market on the consumer side. They say the only time you're not being advertised to in the US is when you have your eyes closed, and I'm sure they're working on that as well. Why do you think it is so different here in the UK? And why do you think that market on the B2C side hasn't really developed as much as it probably could have?
So I think it's in the UK, I think the UK and Germany both have very strong consumer markets. So when you think about, I guess, the scale of disruption in consumer fintech as an example, there's a huge number of really exciting and interesting businesses in that space that are equal size to sort of some of the US competitors. I mean, the UK market's 1/10 of the size of the US. So some of the direct consumer brands that start in the UK, they get to market dominance and really good positions here. They're obviously going to be a slightly different scale to the US, but we're really sort of bullish around the opportunity that exists here. I think one of the really exciting things that we're starting to see actually with businesses like Bloom Wild and Gusto and Gymshark and Fuel and those types of brands that have started to get to super scale is that they build in a much more capital efficient way. So they get talked about less in terms of the VC landscape, but in terms of building big businesses that consumers really love, they get to the same type of scale as a Casper or a Warby Parker. They just take a slightly different trajectory to get there.
And why do you think that is?
So I think it's probably that because you do have a different initial market size, like there's more thought around whether the right option is always to take a lot of capital. It's like a little bit of a less of a race than it is in particular. And so there can be a benefit of like focusing on your customers, making sure that you have really good profit margins, really good retention rates, and like driving like a consistently good business and like compounding that advantage over time. And as a founder, you don't really want to be taking it, like if you don't need to, it's not always in your sort of, it's not always the best thing for you as a founder to be taking to the capital just because it's available, because whatever the valuation, you're diluted under that and you're put under pressure to maybe make decisions that do sometimes detract from like focusing on customer love, really good retention, and really good things.
Can end up hurting you later.
It can definitely end up hurting you later. And I think you see that in consumers, like if you just throw money at the wall at like scaling, you can end up like over discounting, which doesn't just like ruin your unit economics, but it also really damages like the customer sort of perception of the brand. And so, you know, those are some of the things that happen less if you take less capital.
Yeah. Not really in venture, but Subway sandwiches, I think, is a great example of that. Now, the only time that people will buy it is when they do the $5 footlong deal.
Exactly. And then that's
the American. There you go. Yeah, Subway. Oh god, my kids love that. So I just wanted to sort of dig a bit deeper, Camilla, into sort of, you mentioned the 4 segments of the business. You know, so far this year, or maybe during the COVID period, have you seen 1 or 2 of those segments, I suppose, spawning lots of kind of really interesting founders in your sort of pipe of deal flow? You know, has there been a bias to one or the other, or you know, how's the sort of deal flow? And also with that, you know, I'm always quite intrigued by how many founders approach you probably a week or a month or a year.
So I think we've been really fortunate. So I think this thesis that we call like shared value was like starting to come into the sort of main term lexicon, but I don't think it was like truly there. I think COVID had really accelerated that. Like it's in healthcare, it's forced a step change. And so, you know, there is now a belief that sort of consumerized technology, whether direct to consumer or B2B2C, is the direction that healthcare is going to go. So we've seen massive proliferation in that space. Lots of really experienced founders that, you know, were in other sectors like travel or retail that decided, you know, not to focus on those businesses and set up new things focused on that space. So that's been really amazing. We think the acceleration in that space is, you know, 5 to 10 years ahead in like quite a short period of time. Flip side to that, huge competition, and you're still working in the UK with a market that's like predominantly captive to the UK, and so like that challenge doesn't go away. I think in the sustainability space, really similar. So I think as people have had more time to be conscious and they've sort of had more time to think about how they want to live in their life in the future, that sustainability trend has also really accelerated, and we're seeing founders, I guess, as is natural, sort of fill that void. We're also seeing a huge number of repeat founders where they've built like a great business before and they now want to dedicate their lives to building something bigger over the next sort of 10 to 20 years. So that's probably been the most exciting trend.
And the 2 that you mentioned, 2 of the companies you've made investments in are publicly, it's been publicly announced. What's the name of those companies and what do they do?
One has been publicly announced.
Okay, which
really hoping changes over time. It's not that exciting to only ever, but we have.
Well, so by the time this airs, it'll probably be 6-8 weeks from now. So
you just give us the inside tip. Yeah.
They might kill us.
I'm joking. No, we'll wait and see and look forward to that. So and then I suppose, you know, going again, you know, digging into numbers, because obviously I have lots of founders who, you know, when we're thinking of advising and you know, trying to help with the pre-seed Series A companies and with IR or commercialization, they all sort of say to me like, oh, so what's the data and what's the credentials, how many companies have you helped and are now unicorns and things like that. And it's kind of like, well, so and kind of cute. We probably, we feel we get a fair flow through the Notwits network of really lovely people and funds and founders and corporates. But sometimes I look at my inbox and I'm like, oh my God, drowning in decks. And I'm just, we had Dan Bauer on from Superseed a couple of weeks ago, and he said, oh, yeah, we get 5,000 decks a year. And I was like, what? That's
and that he
huge.
looks at most of them personally as well.
Yeah. And so, I mean, what's, because you relatively, you're razor focused on the pieces that you invest in, or the verticals. What would you say is your sort of number?
Yeah, so it's definitely not 5,000. So I think we get about 1,200 a year.
Right.
I think probably the most exciting thing is that, I guess for us, it's about like those being on thesis. And so what we found is by having a very clearly defined thesis, the number of companies that then go through our pipeline is sort of higher than it used to be at the fund that I was at before, because generally they're quite qualified. I guess we haven't formally launched yet or done much PR or marketing. So even the cold inbound emails that we get from founders, they're normally founders that are highly aligned with the mission.
Have done their research in order to
They've
find
done their
you.
research,
Yeah. I was going to sort of say, like, how is that broken down? Because there's often lots written in social media and other forms about, you can only get to VCs through knowing someone, which I don't think is
definitely not true.
But then I kind of sort of say to founders, and they say to us like, oh well, I've emailed every single VC's website where you can use Airbridge or something. You upload your deck, and I had 3 people reply, and so you kind of then think, is it really true? Or is it kind of VCs playing the game that they're being PC, or do they actually really look at every deck that comes their way?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of like the quality of what comes across, and so someone writes a really great email to. So we had one inbound, and unfortunately we hadn't closed the fund. Otherwise, we would really have wanted to do that investment. Another fund has done it. It's an amazing company, and their email was just amazing. They were like, our sustainability mission is around this. We want to change the fashion industry. Like, these are the sort of innovations in materials technology we're doing. This is like our key numbers. Like, this is like all the actions we're taking. We're always going to reply to that email. We're always going to be like, wow, we're so excited that they thought about coming to us. If you just get a generic email, which is like, hey, I'm raising a pre-seed, it's like B2B.
I have a recruiter friend in the US, works for a big company, and we were talking about applying to jobs and this sort of thing, and he says, well, if you put in half-ass effort, you often ends up with half-ass results. So I
think it's exactly that. Like, we're always looking for new investments, so like if something comes in cold and it looks amazing, like everyone's going to jump on it.
So that tip for like a great founder in any of the verticals you're focused on, it is to grab the attention. You do look at these decks, but obviously that founder's got to be very focused, very personal, very have thought through their approach, and actually you can see that they've actually realized that there could be an initial fit without having met you or John or any of the other members of the team. And so that's really your advice, that you have to really focus and look at each fund and do as much research as possible on that fund to actually before you approach them.
I mean, the message you're trying to get across is this is a good opportunity and it matches your investment thesis, right? That's kind of what you have to get across as the entrepreneur in the first email. Right?
And I'd probably say, would you say that, has COVID's changed the dynamic, that you would have probably have sourced, I don't know, a number of the companies that get into your top 20 each month or quarter from events, or would they have come through other VCs that you know and work with and your network, or has COVID accelerated the sort of what the blind intro is, or the reach out?
It still looks relatively similar. So I think we get 25% inbound roughly. We get 25% from broader network. So like things like all of the amazing companies you sort of share with us. We get 25% from other VCs, and then we do outbound 25%. And so that's
so the outbound is where you just say, hey, we do this.
Yeah, exactly. And actually very similar to founders. We only get responses if it's very personalized, and there's a reason for that founder to speak to us. So, it goes in both directions, that I think.
And do you, Eka, do you have like a scouting network or anything like that, or is it more to do with you, John? And do excuse me if I'm missing other people in the business. It's John Coker, it's your good self, and then anyone else?
We have a third partner called Andrew. So how we think about it, so Andrew's head of network, so he focuses on network, and he does leads on a lot of the deal sourcing, so thinking about events and outbound and sort of just being more engaged in the community. So Andrew sort of leads on all of those things. We've just hired a data scientist, and hope to become smarter around how we use data to sort of deal source. And then we're actually in the process of hiring a research associate so that we can sort of pick themes like the future of hydrogen, which we think is really exciting, but we're not very educated on that. And that individual can sort of lead on finding companies in that space. And
the current focus is UK or UK and Europe?
UK. So very much UK, very much so we think regional UK just has so much opportunity. When you look at big consumer winners, lots of them were in sort of built in sort of Manchester, like the Hut Group, Birmingham, Gymshark. And so we want to be the player you come to if you're sort of building a business in the UK, wherever you are.
And a lot of those places now have a new influx of talent, right? With people moving out of London.
Yeah, and they've just, because they're such big businesses, they've spawned incredible talent as well. So
lifestyle. Yeah. And would sorry, being myopic again, and it's C2 Series A or?
So Chris, as you know, the definition of these things has changed over time.
What is your definition of seed?
So we wrote, I guess, similar check sizes to what we were writing at MMC, which was 750,000. So 2 million first check, going up to 3 or 4 over time. That used to be classified as Series A. I think it now, some of the seed funds are writing bigger checks than that. So we call it pre-A. And what it means for us is we can see enough consumer metrics to know that consumers really love your proposition. So we can see NPS and retention and the type of things that we get excited about when we look at consumer businesses, and that we can see that the hallmarks of starting to be able to build a great team. So we love it, 2 or 3 people, and we can talk to those early employees and just understand how that company is evolving. So if you got those 2 things and you're sort of on thesis, then
so
stage.
So okay. I've kind of we've been doing our sort of averaging or our median, and it seems to me that a really hot seed now is around, can be anywhere up to £5 million, and a really hot Series A can be anywhere from 18 to 25 million. Is that kind of what you agree with, kind of ish? Are we in the right ballpark?
I think there's definitely some deals that get done at that size, and those numbers that is increasing.
Probably 10-20%, and then it sort of,
and then it really
goes
down. I think we think it's probably about 10%, and then there's still a really good rump of excellent businesses that are raising that sort of 1 to 3 million.
Do you think the valuation inflation will sort of go all the way through the pipe and out the other side to exit, or is it just meaning less returns for VCs if things keep inflating the way that they are?
I mean, it's always really difficult to tell on that. I think when you see the number of $1 billion companies that are being created in Europe, like that rate has gone up exponentially. And if that trend continues, that suggests it's going to flow all of the way through. We're definitely really hopeful it's going to stay all of the, continue all the way through. You know, I think to that point about accelerated trends, like you take grocery, I think pre-COVID, it was like less than 7% penetration. It's like hit 15, 16%. Like that's just a massive market that's going to create some like really big winners coming out the other side.
I just feel a bit awkward asking this question, which is the whole, women in tech, the stigma, I have a large number of female friends who are VCs or founders, and some of them shoot me daggers whenever I mention it, and then others are like, what's the point of it, and and then others are like, yes, I completely agree that we have to have this out there and in bright lights. And referencing back to the point that I mentioned earlier, probably yourself and then Gillian Manis at Structure VC in San Francisco, you're probably the first two VCs who are ladies, or female VCs. God, I'm getting tongue-tied already. Who stood out, and I think you stood out then because it was very much a case of in 2013 and 14, there literally were very few female VCs. If you look at London, if you look at San Francisco, anywhere in the world. And I mean, what's your general take, and do you get, what's your general opinion, and do you think it's improved the landscape, the job? There's more opportunities for women in VC. Where's the thoughts there?
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's definitely become a bigger topic of discussion than it was when I first started. I think one great thing about the European landscape is that there are some really fantastic, very experienced female partners. So people like Sonali at Excel, Laura Bowden at 83 North. So there's always been really good role models. They, to sort of, and I guess they've built consistent, incredible track records at very, very big funds. So I think from a sort of performance perspective, it's always been really fantastic to see that there are sort of female VCs that operate at that level and, are at least as successful as their sort of male peer group at those really successful firms. So, I think they've led the way in terms of it being clear that you can do it, which is really amazing. I think there has definitely been a shift, especially, I guess, at the associate level on the sort of composition of sort of genders within the teams. I actually think when you look,
do you think there's more interest from women to get into VC now, and that's actually happening as well?
Is there more interest? It's really difficult for me to know because I didn't see the stats, I guess, when we sort of used to hire at MMC. I think there probably were more male applicants at the time, and that we're hiring at the moment, and we actually have more female applicants for the research role than we do have male applicants, which is awesome to see. But so there probably has been a bit of a shift in terms of the sort of pipeline. I think there's probably a bit of a shift in terms of community as well, because the more individuals sort of talk to each other about VC as an option, I guess that's a really positive trend, and you often see sort of clusters of people from different firms apply all at the same time. And so if those clusters are sort of within a female network, you often see a cluster there, which is really exciting.
I suppose flipping it around the other way, do you think there's more female founders now? Do you think they're getting opportunities? Obviously you see some of the numbers are awful, but I suppose we I don't know, Anthony and I and Paolo and Stuart and Josh and Ryan, we as a business, I think we have quite a high percentage of female founders sending us decks. I mean, if I look at when we used to do events, all those that in the Notwicks pitch events, we did do some data going back to the founder question, and it was something like 26% of people who pitched at our events early, very early stage, and actually some of the scale up events, female. And I've never really kind of been, I've always felt we've done our, we support, I don't know why the numbers are so low in the the overall numbers. I don't because I think it just baffles me. I don't know. Does it baffle you?
Yeah, it does baffle us, and we find it like quite tricky. So I think our pipeline is about 60-40 at the moment. So male 60 and female 40. I think one of the things we do see often is that there's you have 3 co-founders, and so you often have a female founder, but they're not necessarily CEO. So we're quite focused actually on trying to invest specifically in female founded CEOs rather than teams that have a female founder in, but not in a CEO role.
Yeah,
I would say
that's a really important point, actually. I think you've made there that I did hear of a bit of a trend a few years ago where some founders were just kind of moving in a female person to be an apparent founder as well, so they could appeal to a wider audience of funds. And it's critical. I think Priya, that Marion is hyper focused on exactly that point that you just made, that it's got to be a properly founded business from a woman, or it's just a bit silly to do it as a marketing kind of scam. You're going to get found out if you do that. One of the points,
it's slightly offensive as well. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's completely out of order. And it kind of like when we do our digging, we kind of like, so I see you didn't quite start with the company at the same time as the other 2 founders. So anyhow. But then, okay, well, I mean, I don't want to treat the subject glibly, but we always try, from our side, we always try and help. We talk to lots of wonderful VCs like you. They're very focused, and there is a massive amount of support for both sexes, and I think it's great, and I think it will only grow as the industry gets bigger, and I think I really hope it becomes less of an issue. I really hope.
I think there's encouraging signs. Like, we're looking at an investment at the moment, and we would love to make that investment. It's a 2 female founders, 3 female founders actually, including in the CEO role. And I think they have 4 term sheets. It's like massively competitive. So there are sort of like an increasing number of female founders raising big early stage rounds. So that's great.
And also I suppose we're a bit of a sort of barometer here, and I see an increasing amount of female VCs and private equity individuals asked to join the network, the community, and I think that's great, and I long for it to continue. So then, changing tack again, I'm doing a lot of swerving today. I'm always really interested in a VC or a person who's been in a really established, great job that you were in at MMC, and you've decided, I want to do it myself now. I want to throw caution to the wind. I want to go off and create my own VC, and there will be people listening that are perhaps thinking about this, because it's a great area. And is it easy to do that?
So I definitely don't think it's easy. So I think if you're going to do it, you want to have like a really clear view of like why you want to do it, and do it with people you really trust, because it's a very long journey. So I think I was fortunate that John and myself have worked together for a really long time. We sort of co-invested, or sort of worked on the same investments, like some of them I had, some of them he had led. So we knew that we had a very strong working relationship and a high level of trust. And Andrew, the third partner, John has actually known since they were children. So they've also known each other for a very long time. I think that's super important, because the average time to raise a first fund in the UK is something like 2 years, unless you're sort of backed,
really lucky
structure. Yes. It is a long time, and there's like ups and downs through that period of time. So you sort of need to be in a team that there's like mutual support, mutual respect. You can get each other up every day and get excited about things. So I think, but if you have the right people to do it with, and you have like a vision of what you want to do, couldn't recommend it more highly. I've loved the last 2 years, even though they've been quite tricky. I've learned a huge amount. It's really exciting to be thinking about.
Do you have to make a lot of sacrifices?
So I remember talking about this with John, who is like really amazing, before we sort of started, and he was like, you have to think in life like what's the most important thing for you, and like what you really want to achieve. And then if you get that straight, then other decisions you make that might look like sacrifices aren't sacrifices. You know, I think it's obviously expensive not to be paid for 2 years. And so, you know, I think you have to make sacrifices on that front. I love skiing. It's my favorite sport. You know, I have not been skiing for 2 or 3 years. I promised myself until we closed the fund, there would be no skiing. So I think, you know, there are sort of, you do need to make a degree of sacrifices. It's quite a long time till you can invest, which actually for me has been probably the hardest thing. So, you know, I was relatively early in my career at MMC, was super lucky, had some like great early stage companies, but you know, if it takes you 2 years to fundraise, like there's a period of time where you're not investing, and sometimes
just watching great opportunities pass you by.
You're like, oh my God, I'd love to be doing that investment.
And the experience you've had of the whole fundraising, you know, for your own VC, has that been tricky, enlightening, fun, horrible?
Yeah, a bit of everything, I think.
Right.
So I think it's been really enlightening. So I think when I think about interacting with founders who are fundraising, it's definitely made me more thoughtful. And actually like the quick no, which I'm still not very good at, because I get excited about companies, but you know, the quick no is probably one of the things I've like learned the most about, that, you know, that's less painful than a slow no. You know, I think I've realized a lot around how long it takes to fundraise, which, you know, is less clear if you're someone like MMC, which has a lot of capital and was always around like deploying capital, because when I was there, significant capital, and so it's a different.
And you're you know, not going too deep into your sort of funding backers or partners, the general shift is it mainly UK LPs or what, some European?
Great combination. So mainly UK. We're super lucky. The British Business Bank is our cornerstone, and they like could not have been more helpful. So they really helped us make sure that like the structure was in the right place. They helped us make sure we didn't make a lot of mistakes. We've got 25 entrepreneurs in the fund, I think 12 of whom we've invested in before, and they've just been amazing. Like they've like helped us through the journey. They've sort of given us a lot of prods when we've been going too slow. They've like been cheerleaders. So that it's been great actually to have them like more integrated in a sort of different way of working with them. And
that's good. Yeah, because you never really hear much from people about how that relationship works, and it's interesting, those comments that you're pointing out there. I don't know, Anthony, did you have
yeah, not counting the BBB, the remaining pool of money that was raised, what kind of percentage breakdown is it between retail and institutional? Because I always find that very interesting, you know, with the institutional base in the UK for LPs.
It's really different if you look at the first close versus the second close. So in the first close, like it was the percentage was quite significantly weighted towards retail investors. We've done a subsequent close, and that's much more weighted towards institutional investors. I mean, we were really fortunate as well, because the Big Society Capital, which is sort of public, you know, they invested substantially into the fund early on, and then they introduced a number of like other really great mission-aligned investors, and so we have some of the leading sort of impact LPs on board, and I guess that's a sizable percentage of the overall fund. So that composition has changed over time, probably very similar to like a company. You have angel investors at the start, and then you see a bit more institutional base over time.
Yeah. I imagine as well, it's the same sort of principle of it's easier to raise 100 million rather than 100,000. It's probably the same for VCs as well.
It is very much the same for VCs. It takes a long time to get the first few million in.
So, bigger picture question. 2021. We've had a number of people on the show. We're actually coming to the end of season 1 soon, and some really amazing insights from both the fun stars and the found stars. You know, if you were to sort of pick a trend that you think will really evolve over, I suppose, the year that we hope we're going to all fully go back to work and things are going to normalize and we're going to have parties and beers and pubs and hairdressers.
Only if you've got your vaccine passport, apparently.
Wow, yeah, so I have to see about that. But I mean, just what would be your sort of big big bet for 2021, do you think, Camilla, from a sort of work perspective, or a sector that might rocket or the like?
Yeah, so ours is definitely sustainability. Like, we think we started to see like a paradigm shift last year, and that's just accelerating through this year. And there's so many businesses we're looking at that space where we're just like, wow, this growth is absolutely insane, and the like consumer love metrics are incredible. We think we're really at the start of that curve. There aren't category leaders in that space at the moment. So that's the space, I guess, we're excited about for 2021, and we're really down.
Is there any particular piece in that sustainability bit that you're extremely excited about?
What we're particularly excited about is companies that it doesn't sound the sexiest of trends. It's what we're particularly excited about is founders that are using like data really, really effectively to bring transparency to the sustainability supply chain. Because I think previously sustainability has been like branding, but it hasn't always been supported in like actually the behavior behind that. But we think this next wave is really like creating products and services that are verifiably sustainable and better than solutions before. And that's really like a hard data problem. So where any company that's like using data to like improve sustainability, we're super excited about.
Apply here.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, that's great. And then as a last couple of questions, I think Rishi Sunak was on Clubhouse this week, which I thought was somewhat amusing. Are we going to see Camilla Dolan appearing on Clubhouse soon? And what do you think of the whole Clubhouse further?
Yeah, I think it's really great. So as a user, like I like it and I sort of use it. I think you might see Andrew on it. So so I think Andrew is planning to sort of run some sort of Clubhouse sessions. He actually sort of built a big sales team before. So he sort of built a team from 10 to 200 people. So I think he's planning on doing some sessions around like building teams and talent and things like that. Great and engaged new consumer platform.
Do you think it's here to stay, Clubhouse, or do you think it might be one of the ones that was great in COVID and fizzles into its own fizzle, so to speak?
I think it's probably got to sufficient scale now with sufficiently engaged users over a long enough period of time that it's here to stay, and it does. I guess it's a different form of interaction to other.
Whopping valuation on it, though, isn't it? It's just very, very San Francisco or Valley driven.
Are they a one-trick pony, though? It's something that could be just adapted into the other social media platforms. Do we need another Clubhouse, or can we just take that feature and run with it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, which platform would be the platform that integrates it? Because it does feel like it is different from a lot of the other social media platforms. So I'm sure they're all trying to. I'm sure they're all thinking about like how they do it.
That point always reminds me again, not to drone on about my kids, but they all love Fortnite, especially the boys, and and then Ubisoft and EA were then built games that incorporated what is the the Fortnite way of playing, called Battle Royale, where you obviously play with all your mates. And if you ask any kid from, I suppose, 8 to 15 now, would they do the EA version or the Ubisoft version or Fortnite? It's just Fortnite. It's the way that they used to play. So probably that's going to save Clubhouse in a way, that it's the unique, the brand experience, the first mover. So yeah, well, that's it. Let's wait and see. And then look, last one but least, because we've taken a lot of your time. It's nearly 12:15, and oh look, the dog.
What's made a difference. Yeah.
What's he or she called?
He's called Pluto.
Pluto.
Toto.
Toto. Sorry, we're both going deaf. Anthony. All right, and that's a nice name. Very relaxed. Clearly, it's certainly Friday afternoon in the Dolan residence. So last one from us. The lockdowns brought a lot of TV viewing to our audience. Anything in particular you're feasting on Netflix or Amazon?
Rewatching The Wizard of Oz with Toto.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been watching Undercover, which I could not recommend more highly.
Undercover.
About
Tell me more.
Undercover. So it's on Netflix, and it's about some cops that go undercover to make a drug bust, and it's really good.
Wow. Is it in England or?
So it's based in Belgium, actually, but it's English language, so it's like watching still.
Oh, right.
I watched.
That's quite a new thing.
I think it was 2019. Yeah.
I watched the College Scandal on Netflix. It was all about the Varsity Blues bust in the US, and it's sort of like a reenactment because they had all the tapes. So then they reenacted and took literally verbatim what they said on all the FBI wiretaps and acted it out. If you like that sort of thing, it's pretty entertaining to watch.
I love those types of things.
Yeah.
Crime
There you
related.
go. Well, look, thank you for that, Anthony. Well, look, Camilla, it's been really interesting. Thank you for your time. Yeah, I'm always super happy when I talk to you. You're a real leading light in VC, and I watched your career blossom, and always been quite proud that I was there at the start when you were in my audiences at the early Notwicks events. So, well done, and lovely to of you to share the thoughts today, and wish you a happy weekend, and we'll keep in touch and hopefully see the new fund grow and grow and grow, and see more success. So thanks again. And Anthony,
thank you for your ongoing support. Really appreciate it.
Anthony, have you got any last words?
No, just congrats and nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you too. And I hope you guys have a great weekend too.